Okay. So shall I cancel it? Shall I need to go on it?
Whatever works for you. You're now the host, and you seem to have been able to activate the recording.
Yeah.
So whatever's good for you, you can start, stop when you want to.
Yeah. I'm trying to find out how I stop the recording.
I think the
Oh,
same
hang on.
button.
Pause.
And work my way through this. So, as you know, what was it, a couple of 3 years ago, there was a problem with that. Was it the gas pipeline in the Baltic where there was an explosion and suddenly nobody could get any gas in Europe? And that was a big problem for a while. They seem to have handled it, but it pointed out the fact that suddenly you can not have a source of energy that you've relied on for a long time. And as you'll discover here, um, uh, just thinking outside the box, let me just go through this and then feel free to make any comment you want. And if you hear heresy, let me hear about heresy later. So let me just go through it. So cost of independent electric power for the Republic of Ireland. Let's think differently for a moment. Years and doesn't have the daily feedback that some of the audience members obviously will have living there. Now, most of the information was gathered from Google, Wikipedia, and Data, which is an excellent website if you want to look at some power information. Now, as you know, there is generated power and there's consumed power. So I believe I've got everything correctly in terms of appropriate numbers. However, this simple table still applies. Kilowatt hours is 10 to the 3, megawatt hours is 10 to the 6, gigawatt hours is 10 to the 9, and terawatt hours is 10 to the 12. And I believe that is correct. So let's think about this as a thought experiment. Using Einstein's old idea of a thought experiment, how could one figure the cost of impact of electricity independence for the Republic of Ireland? So consider this. In trying to compile any data for the Republic, you have to consider various energy sources. There are, for example, sources of coal, which is depleting. There's oil and gas, which seems to be the biggest portion. There's electricity, which is increasing all of the time. There's biomass, which was greater than I expected. And then there's turf, of course, which, thanks to the European Union, is no longer used, at least officially. There is an increased demand for electric power. However, that tends to be concealed when you look on this graph here, because it's included with hydro, wind, solar, etc. However, as you can see, by far the biggest portion appears to be oil and gas. Now, as far as I know, Ireland gets all of its oil from either the UK or maybe Norway. And gas comes in also from offshore. And to make this data here realizable, they had to reduce it to a common base, which is MTOE, which is million tons of oil equivalent. So, having said that, how could Ireland work on energy alone, electricity alone? Suppose Ireland had no access to imported oil or gas in the future. Would it be possible for the country to run on electricity alone? Is there a way to estimate or roughly calculate the cost? Is there an entity that could be used as a start? Something that is measurable that could be used as a data point, and then use that data point to figure out what the impact would be? And is it possible that there's a simple multiplier? Now, what could be a data point? All of you are familiar with Turlough Hill. This is this 292 hydropower project in the Wicklow Hills, which was built originally starting in 68. I was still at Siemens in 1969 when the project took off and was moving along. And then it was finally finished in and commercial operation in 74. Now, what they did was they went through a thorough rehabilitation and modernization from 2007 to 2012. So now the system actually generates 355.26 gigawatt hours of electricity per year. Now, the total power consumption in Ireland in 2021 was 4,200 kilowatt hours of electricity per household per year. Now, that's per the Commission for Regulation of Utilities, CRU. Now, the total metered electricity consumption was 28,506 gigawatts in 2021. That is, if I'm correct, 28.5 terawatt hours of electrical consumption. And this is 2021, so we're looking back a little bit. And this is per the Central Statistics Office. Now, according to Electric Ireland, that's at their website right there, right now, the night rate for electricity in Ireland is 19.35 cents per kilowatt hour. And at the peak, it's 39.30, but the average is 36.83 cents per kilowatt hour. So keeping that in mind, let's do some math here, and I believe I got this right. If the total power consumption is 28,506 gigawatts, and the average cost of electricity is 36.8 cents per kilowatt, then the cost of electricity per year is that big number there, kilowatts times 36.83. In other words, it's 10.5 billion euros per year. Now, if Turlock produces 355 megawatts of electricity, then the total number 28,506 divided by 355 gives you 80. Therefore, it would make sense that it would take 80 Turlock to electrify the Republic in 2021. And hold that for a minute. So there's a data point. If Turlock produces 355.26 gigawatts of electricity, then you can use that as a data point to figure out load and cost impact on any new project that's being planned. For instance, say Google or Apple wanted to develop a new artificial intelligence project in Ireland, you could simply use this TH figure to figure out what the impact on the grid would be. Well, it'd take 10 TH to accomplish the task, or whatever the number was. Now, again, this is electricity consumption in Ireland in 2023. And I got to tell you here, this didn't come out quite right. This ordinal here is 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So the electricity consumption has increased by 2.2% per year since 2014. And that number is 31.5 terawatt hours of electricity consumed. Now, services are the largest electricity consumer. Now, these are the large service customers, and I got to assume it's a big hospital or an army base or something like that, followed by households, which is 27%, and then industry is 23%, which I'd say are smaller companies like 10, 15, 20, 50, 100 person companies. And that's the source of that data.
So, just a quick one. On the services, surely the biggest consumer are the data centers.
Maybe so. And, you know, I'm just describing the information as it's presented at this website.
Yeah, but 20-odd% of our energy consumption is from data centers.
Okay. So I would say if it's largest electricity consumers, then 20% of the 48 is data centers. Anyway, moving on, Ireland's total energy consumption, electricity consumption, like I mentioned, then there's renewable energy. What really surprised me here was that Ireland has one of the highest wind power penetration indexes in the world. In 2020, wind turbines generate, look at that number, 36.3% of Ireland's electrical demand. That was really an attention getter. However, they're still importing oil and gas, and this is in 2013. it was 5.7 billion. That was down from 6.5 billion the year before, but it's only gone up since then. So energy imports in 2022, Ireland imported 81.6% of the total primary energy requirement. Right there, look at that. That's 80%. That's a huge number. So if the cost of Turlough, according to available information, the pump storage facility in Ireland cost 22 million to construct when it was built in 1968. And boys, there's a deal right there if ever there was one. That would equate to roughly 403 million today, in today's money. However, there's no readily available information on the exact cost of the refurbishment. So that number may actually be 450 to maybe 500, but I'm using the 403 number. So 80 Turlough Kilns would cost 403 times 80. That's 32,240 million at least. In other words, 32.24 billion. And you look at that and you scratch your head and say, hey, that's a hell of a lot of money. However, the bottom line is this. Ireland's GDP was estimated at 492.83 billion in 2023, and they're forecasting 566.39 billion by the end of 2024. Now, 32.24 billion out of that number it's less than 6% of the GDP. Now, that would not be an insurmountable burden on the economy if there was no choice. And I just saw on foil 13 showing the importing cost to be 5.7 to 6 billion or so. Then the return on investment, if you made the investment, would take maybe 5, 6, 7 years at the most. Therefore, all other ramifications aside, political support, national agreement, infrastructure change, and all the rest of it, independence with electrical power would be feasible.
Sorry, Eamon, can I make one point? The only problem with Turlough is only transferring the actual generation. In other words, you need the same amount of capacity to
good point.
The water from the base up to the top.
Yeah, but that's surely only a fraction of
there, but you still have got to have a matching generating capacity.
Are you sure it's matching and it's not a smaller fraction of the total?
I'm not sure. It's obviously done at night. So in other words, it's cheaper, but you do need, you need to pump the water up. So I don't know how it would work out, but it's not independent. It must have a generator to pump its stuff up.
Okay.
They have to have generation. My limited understanding of first year MA Hogan hydraulics and water generation capacity tells me John Butler is right on the money. It basically takes the same amount of energy to pump it up as you get back on the way down.
Okay, so this is just a thought exercise. So this number here, where did it go? Let me back up. The cost of building the pump storage scheme, if you were to do it today, let's say it's $450 million or euros. So this gives you an index here, though. Really, what I'm saying here is, irrespective of the source of energy, you would need 80 times this number here, which is this number down here, to get you to electrical independence. Now, it needn't necessarily be a pump storage scheme. It could be whatever kind of generated power. But the question is, if the Republic of Ireland tomorrow discovered they couldn't get any more oil or any more gas imported, what are they going to do then?
Just fucked.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of this exercise. I mean, at least this gives you a guess number, a kind of a number, but it's not. It's a small little piece of the big GDP. So, I mean, is there any kind of a program to start thinking about this? They've done a hell of a good job on wind power. So
I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure about that, Eamon. I think they made a balls of wind power, particularly offshore energy.
Okay.
That the whole planning regime in relation to offshore energy is a disaster, and they've got
Wow.
all sorts of targets for 2030, which they haven't got the slightest chance in hell of achieving.
Okay.
And in fact, even if you look at today's paper, ESB, who were in bed with I can't remember what other company, who were meant to build 2 offshore farms off Dundalk, have pulled
Gotcha.
out because isn't part of government policy. What the government is doing now, as far as offshore energy is concerned, is that they're providing. They're having these geographical locations, and they're sort of saying, if you're going to build an offshore facility, it's going to go into that location and that location only. And then what they do is they go out to auction, and
Yeah.
you make a bid, and only some of them actually succeed. And you've got, at this moment in time, I think you've got 5 offshore farms that have moved on, and they're all now going through a sort of a NIMBY process.
Okay.
In terms of getting. So first of all, we've got planning issues in relation to just getting through the whole process, and
Okay.
then in terms of the actual works and the cost of the works. So the thing, in fact, is that offshore energy, while you're right to say that about 35% on average on a monthly basis, depending on what the weather's like, comes from onshore wind energy.
Yeah.
As far as my involvement on the offshore side is that it's certainly government targets in terms of what they want to achieve. It's not going to happen. The other thing, in fact, is that there's a new link that currently being constructed between Cork and France.
Okay.
That will be used to transfer energy one way or the other. I mean, the biggest potential for offshore energy is off the west coast.
Okay. Now would that be wave power generation, or it would still be wind?
It would be still wind, but you can still wave. You can't rule out wave, and I suppose closer to the coast, you might have some tidal energy, but it's primarily wind energy, of which the potential is, it's so large that if they could actually harness it without besting around, would actually resolve Ireland's needs. But as you say, that we're still going to need LPG or LNG, or something, because there are going to be times when the wind isn't going to blow. But if you remember our friend, yeah, I'm dying from a cold. Our friend, what's your man, Eddie
O'Connor.
Yeah, his idea was a European grid, where in fact that if the wind didn't blow in point A, it would be blowing in point B. So if you then sort of accumulate all those various sources, you would actually get a sort of a
cumulative,
a smoothed sort of supply
effect. Yeah,
and this is what he was pushing. I mean, the reports that are always worth looking at are the ones that are produced by AirGrid, who are responsible for that. And then in terms of energy usage, if you look at SEAI, Sustainable Energy, what they call it, of Ireland, they do these energy balances, so you can see what, in terms of the energy that's coming in, or sort of the input, and it's an IO, input output type analysis that they carry out. So that's a document. And of course, if you look at the ESB generation, you can looking at that, you can work out from that what the unit cost of electricity generation is.
Okay.
Because they provide that.
Okay, so let me ask a question here. So let's not say it's not a Turlough type operation, but it's a station generating power that can be added to the national grid to get everything closer to independence. I mean, I haven't got a number for what it would cost to start an equivalent generating station, say in the middle of Roscommon or something. So
Well, now,
that would,
hang on a minute. Turlock Hill is a pump storage generation.
right.
There are very few areas or opportunities for pump storage in the whole of Ireland. Turlock
Well,
Hill
there's
is
a lot of mountains around the coast with the plain in the middle. So there are quite a few mountainous counties around. So you don't think there's any potential for that?
You're not suggesting that our future power supply is going to be provided by Turlock Hill Mark II.
I mean,
Mark 20.
as John,
I'm not suggesting it. I'm just suggesting it as a thought experiment. It gives you a number at least. It looks like, say, 450 million euros would create this kind of a plant. And that gives you an index to work on. So the number 80 there, it could be 80 of anything as long as it's generating that kind of power.
But wait a minute.
Guys,
Pump
Liam
storage,
has his hand up.
Yeah.
pump storage.
There's
Okay.
Liam, who may have some really good information on this. Hi, Liam. You've got a comment.
I do indeed. And that is that about 10 years ago, there was a live project, got as far as sort of planning stage. By Mayo County Council were involved, an Eco Energy crowd were involved. And their plan was to pump, I think, seawater up to the top of a nearby mountain. They had the mountain picked and what have you. And you, instead of Turlock Hill, they would actually use wind power to pump it up.
Gotcha.
And then use it. And I asked them why they hadn't proceeded, because the county council was keen, and it was the banks pulled the plug on it about 10 years ago. Now I'm tempted to go over and ask them again, has there been any follow-up or movement?
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah. And I appreciate the information. That's very good. But the thing is, everybody's happy and everybody's fine with the way things are right now. But there was this incident where the gas line was cut off just like that, and there was no gas. So, is there any kind of a contingency plan? Like, is there a backup storage in Ireland for a certain amount of oil and a certain amount of gas?
Well, what they're doing is they're getting some generators in, and also there's doing battery storage. There's an interesting problem that they imported a number of generators that are hanging around Dublin Port, but can't go any further because the bridges on the M50 aren't strong enough to allow them to bring them up across the bridge.
Oh wow!
Wow!
Yeah.
Good advanced plan. That's good
There was
advanced
another
plan.
situation a few years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, when the whole Ukraine thing blew up.
Yeah.
And the plan was to have some LPG storage in off Limerick, and then they wouldn't allow it. The Green Party shot it down. Whereas the plan was to have it there in case we ever needed it. But
What was the
Green Party
concern
didn't like
that somebody could cause an explosion or something?
it. No.
No, the environmental side is objecting to that. It's coming live again, and there's one actually to be near Cork, where they'd have 3 days gas in a tanker permanently off somewhere. And there's
Gotcha.
2 questions of it. There's the purists on the environmental side don't want fracked gas from anywhere after the trouble they had banning it in Ireland. And secondly, the thing could have a little accident, and the Cork voters would no longer be able to vote for our party.
yeah, we also objected to nuclear power in Ireland, but we're getting it from France today.
Absolutely.
They're shipping over nuclear power.
Exactly. So it's hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Same thing with the fracking. People will get
Yeah,
over
you
that
think hypocrisy is unknown in Ireland so far up to this?
Yeah. People will get over that hypocrisy when they're out picking up wood and turf to try to light a fire in the house.
There you go.
You can't burn turf.
But now I don't
Can't burn
understand.
They'll burn turf,
Put the
John,
wood.
if it fucking comes to that.
That's the point here, Barry. I mean, that's the only resource that's going to be around if something goes badly wrong.
Well,
I
I
don't
think,
I don't
you know,
understand.
you guys all know where I'm going to go here, so I might as well throw it out there. What's wrong with small modular nuclear reactors?
But
Sorry to ask that. I've just done a paper of 5 or 6 pages. I'd like your permission to circulate that PDF on exactly that question.
That'd
But
be interesting to
Love
read.
to see that, Liam.
yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
me
an
too.
interesting point that in the papers there, Google are suggesting small nuclear energy sources for powering their own data centers.
Well, you know, Microsoft had that thing going where they're going to resuscitate 3 Mile Island because it's there, they can use it, and they've got enough money to make all the corrections and get it up and running again.
Yeah, and there, Eamon, that's just the front end, the front edge of that wave. I heard the other day on CNBC that all the major tech companies that have those kind of data centers
Right.
are also planning to have
Yeah.
a local energy source so that they're independent of whatever grid they're on in whatever state they're on, and they're all going with all planning to go with small nuclear reactors, small modular reactors.
Well, you know,
But I heard the economics are not there for the small nuclear reactor yet. That's the last I read. It's marginal whether it's a commercial option.
That's a
That's
surprise.
what I heard.
Now, here in California, there's the San Onofre nuclear station down on the coast, which they shut down. And I'm sure there are various entities that are talking about lighting that up again. You may not hear about it in the papers right now, but it's probably going to come later. That's one. The other one is Diablo Canyon, which all the do-gooders want to shut down right now. It's still running, and it was supposed to be shut down by 2029, I think it was. And then a few months ago, Newsom came in and said, no, you're not going to shut it down at 2029. We're going to think about this. So there's, well, Diablo Canyon isn't used right now, but San Onofre, there's got to be people asking questions about that because it's idle at the moment, and that's the source of energy for sure.
Well, I tell you, let me ask you this question. All these people who want to shut everything down, I'd love to walk up to them someday and said, sorry, ma'am or sir, but we have to shut your electricity down because you see,
but of course, exactly.
all the green power is gone, and you wouldn't want to get electricity from coal now, would you? They don't care where it comes from. They just want to cut everybody else's. Huh?
Yeah. That's true. I mean, if it comes down to, hey, are you going to object, or do you want to have electric light in your house and the cooker running, etc.?
Yeah. Well, now hang on a second to that last remark there. That the answer would from an Irish person would not be, what are you going to do? The answer is, why are the data centers taking all my power? Now, I think Ray mentioned that they were taking 20%. And when I put a question in chat, that's 20% of consumption, but what's the percentage of growth? In other words, that this person you stopped in the street has probably reduced his electricity consumption in the last few years, but our national consumption has gone up because of data centers. So what are you going to say to him?
A good question.
With a stick he didn't burn.
Well, maybe a better question would be, is it more important to have some group somewhere trying to figure out how to make this particular part faster using AI, or is it more important that the local citizen and the community get the required power they need?
Yeah, I mean, there's a simple solution to the concern about the data centers. Just tell Google, Microsoft, and all these big tech companies to piss off. Just tell them to stop operating in Ireland, and then the data center demand goes away.
That's true. But
they're already telling the government that.
And you notice I'm laughing when I say that, because the same person bitching about the data center electrical consumption is working indirectly or directly at one of those places.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
there's a trade-off here. You're getting a lot of money, but
the trade-off is that Ireland is a very nice place for data centers because it's got a nice temperate, steady climate. It's not the south of Greece. It's not the south of Italy. It's maybe not Norway either. So it's nice and constant. So I would say that we're probably going to get more than our fair share of data centers, particularly since we're also an Atlantic hub in fiber optic terms.
Eamon, do you need
Yeah.
to keep this shared screen
No,
up?
no, we can shut it down. Let me stop the share here right now. Just a minute. Where was I? I had it no one away. No.
Does anyone have any idea what's the economic impact or benefit of data centers? You know, because Google, Google and all these people, they've large workforce in Dublin, but they're mainly doing sales and all that type of thing. They're not doing just the data centers piece alone. What benefit
Well,
is that?
Okay,
The
think
data
about
centers
this.
are there to enable people to do search and things like that.
Yeah, think about
Yeah.
this. If you have somebody like Google or one of these computer companies, okay, their footprint is very small because they don't employ a lot of people. There's no big demand on the infrastructure for health services, etc. However, they contribute a significantly high, making a significantly high contribution to the state. So
they're giving them bucks, right?
The state
Some serious bucks.
Right.
Pardon?
And
Just
unfortunately, that's what it comes.
Guys, can we separating the data centers from the other activities of those companies? So the data centers alone, forget the offices on east the Grand Canal dock and all the rest, all the salespeople, all of those activities. If you just take away the data centers, what would we lose if they all went away, if anything?
We might lose the other operations because they like having the operations here because we're putting up with their data centers. So if we say, take your data centers away, they might take away the place down the Silicon Dock.
I think they like having, they find good people here for their sales and service stuff. I mean, it seems to me that half of my Jane's, nephews and nieces and their friends are working in these offices in Dublin. They're not working in data centers.
The data centers, I believe, Peter, are becoming a natural requirement for these large tech companies, in large measure because of the voracious appetite today and growing by leaps and bounds for artificial intelligence.
I know.
Yeah.
I know
They're
that.
they're all basing their futures on AI-based technology and improved search engines. Ray probably knows this through his family connections. Google's being challenged big time in the search engine area by the advent of AI. Now, Microsoft has bollocksed it up with their one because it's not working out as well. But you know what? That's not the end of that game. Someone else is going to do it.
Look,
Okay,
I'm not trying to go down a rabbit hole here because maybe it's a moot point. But
no,
if data centers.
No, let Peter finish here.
My question is, do data centers alone? I know these companies need data centers. They don't necessarily need them in Ireland. They can put them in Ballygo backwards in the south of Italy or Sardinia or wherever you like. But if they,
I'm not too sure that's correct. I'm not too sure that's correct that they can be put anywhere and everywhere. Because
okay, well, all I'm saying is, if they were not in Ireland, what would we lose?
Okay, so the next obvious question to that there is, Peter, should the state have guidelines defining, what's valuable in terms of a contribution to the power load for the country and what is not? In other words, if you want to have your data center and you want to have 1 million people online kind of trying to find their next love or something like that, and you're using the power to do that versus providing, power to houses with refrigerators and electric light and all the rest of it, shouldn't there be a guideline there or some kind of requirement that they gotta,
Well,
do something about?
I have the answer to what you're saying. Basically, what Microsoft is doing with 3 Mile Island, they are going to generate their own power for their own purposes. What's to prevent a company in Ireland to say, okay, I need to build a data center and I'm going to build a 100 megawatt plant down the road? What's wrong with that solution?
There are issues in relation to connecting to the grid, and that's one of the weaknesses as far as the Irish electrical system is concerned. You just can't.
Jim, there's this minor.
So the infrastructure can't carry the extra load.
Correct. Yeah, the transmission system isn't adequate at this moment in time for data centers, and that's why they have to get permission from EirGrid before they can do anything.
Well, unless you build your power plant next to where you're going to use it.
Yeah, Jim, that's a good idea, except there's a small organization they'd have to get past in Ireland called On Board Planala. And good luck with that shite.
Okay.
You're dealing with bureaucracy.
Yeah, talk to Shay Foley.
Hey guys, Liam has his hand up again.
I think a law has just been passed a couple of days ago that may make things simpler for bigger stuff. Just if I may, to answer your direct question, what's the benefit to Ireland? I would say that these data centers have to be built, and somebody's got to go in there and do the plumbing and the wiring and that kind of thing, air conditioning, and they have to do it to a world-class standard. And when the thing is done, they then just buzz off and do the same thing in Australia or Croatia or whatever. So that's one of the benefits.
There's also ongoing employment when the data center is up and running. There might be 100 or 200 jobs in every data center.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but I still say that
Amazon doesn't do its search engine stuff for Ireland out of the Philippines.
No.
It's local.
And that's why we need to have data centers in Ireland to allow Irish industry to progress.
Right.
And let those companies build their own power plants, and everybody should be happy, right?
So is what you're saying, Raymond, is that if they're going to build a data center, then the information generated by the center is going to be used in Ireland? Is that what you're saying?
That's my understanding.
Ah, okay.
Oh,
now that's a valid point.
Yeah, I don't quite grasp that. Would have thought that, all of this is a worldwide web.
Well, so, no doubt about it. I mean, think about all of the different industries that are in Ireland that are computing information or helping people offshore, fill out their insurance forms or whatever else like that. I mean, that's a major load they've got already. It's providing employment for Irish people. They've got Irish jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a good thing. But as this AI thing starts now, is it valid for people to be spending time generating information that's going to go to wherever? There's no benefit for Ireland as a country. Is that where the line should be drawn?
What way do you mean no benefit for Ireland?
So I guess that's the question. I mean, Ireland obviously right now with Google, with Apple, they've got all this revenue generated that they didn't expect to have. So that's a valuable resource for the country going year to year to year. And they don't want to mess with that, obviously. But at the same time, where do you draw the line between, helping out these folks who've been so generous to the country and trying to kind of preserve the country as an entity and have a power generation source that's reliable?
Well, I mean,
and is never going to go away.
This is a continuous strategy, or that needs to be looked at. The whole sort of balance between energy for domestic and industrial use versus how much are you prepared to provide for data centers. So it's a sort of a finite cake, that has to be split. And so there's all sorts of variables and parameters that obviously, in doing projections in terms of the ability in the first instance to generate more electricity, and then how are you going to allocate that additional electricity, and do you have the transmission system in place to enable that energy to be distributed to all its customers? So it's a multi-criteria, multi-parameter type issue.
But with regard to Jim's point, it has been mentioned that companies now wanting to get permission for data centers are to provide their own electricity.
Yeah.
So that has been discussed.
Now there's a start right there.
Yeah.
When I worked, easier said than done, but they are saying, okay, if you're going to use up a lot of power, you should generate your own power.
Yeah, and the reality is, guys, and just watch what's happening in the US at the moment. We will see that eventually. The companies over here are saying, we don't want to rely on the Texas grid or anything else. We want the data center power next door. And the plan that I see evolving is the modular nuclear reactor, which somebody pointed out, the economics are there's still a little bit of a cost, but that cost is going to come down. And when we're talking about life cycles of 20, 30 years, they can amortize that cost, even though it's expensive. The alternative is worse. Where do they get the power in Ballygo backwards, Idaho?
Well, I tell you where they're restarting coal plants.
That's supposed to be a no-no, but I'm sure you're right.
Yes, they are.
Barry, I'm with you, but my impression is politically that will never happen in Ireland, not in our lifetimes.
I think that the camel's nose is under the tent, Peter, with the French connection, using a bad pun here.
Yeah.
You're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a hard time justifying. You don't want nuclear, right? Turn off your TV tonight, because your electricity is nuclear. Yeah. It just happens to be coming from Toulouse.
I know. Well,
is there a planning?
I don't think there's any word in the Irish language for hypocrisy, so I think we're stuck there.
Now, is there a planning?
Last time.
Yeah. Is there a planning department in the Irish government that reviews these kinds of questions? And is there any kind of a plan or people who can plan moving forward? So a sudden change in either oil and gas, they've got a way to handle it.
Do you guys ever watch Yes Minister, the English program?
I've seen it 2 times.
This is the situation. And when he says the Prime Minister, we got to have, how are you going to do it? Well, we have to have a study. I see. And that will take 18 months. Yes. 2 years. Yes. And what will the outcome be? Oh, we should have another study.
I mean, you're a cynic. I'm just looking at something on my phone here. It says, however, in 2022, EirGrid went one step further and issued a moratorium on the development of new data centres, specifically in Dublin, until 2028. This was not due to environmental concerns, but due to the impact of data centres on Ireland's energy infrastructure and concerns around capacity.
Okay. Now that's something. Yeah,
and they have a valid point.
Yeah, but guys, that's not new. That's not making the requirement for the load to go away. That's just a way of artificially limiting the energy.
Extra demand, new demand.
The bottom line is, if Ireland wants to continue on its path of being an economic powerhouse, and it is an economic powerhouse, relatively speaking, it is going to have more electric generation capacity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just, there's no way to avoid this unless you want to. The question needs to be asked of the people wanting to limit the creation of data centers. What part of your lifestyle do you want to downgrade? Just tell us which one it is, because you're going to downgrade it.
Nobody's going to downgrade willingly for a data center. They're going to tell you, and the government, get lost.
Well, then tell them that, fine, you're going to get lost and you no longer will have access to Google search or Amazon or all these things that the technology companies provide. They all go together. This is not a zero-sum game, guys.
And those jobs pay good money.
To answer your question
graduate.
about nuclear, Ireland has changed an awful lot since we graduated. You know, there was no contraception, there was no sex till the Late Late Show came on, etc., etc., etc. We had smoking. We had now pubs without smoking. We even drive according to speed limits. I kind of personally haven't heard any emotion against nuclear power since roughly 1990. And I rather doubt if the emotion is still there that would prevent it.
The big problem with nuclear power is that one nuclear power currently represents too large of a percentage of the total grid. So if it goes down, it can be a disaster for the grid. Our grid is not big enough to use 1,000 megawatt power plant, because if it's forced out, half the country will go dark.
And Jim, that is exactly the point. They're too big and too expensive to build. And that's the reason why the SMRs are coming on like crazy.
And I agree with you.
This is an explosion. I mean, we haven't seen it in Ireland yet, but you can just watch what's happening in the US. It'll be happening elsewhere as well. Small modular reactors are the only solution to the question you raise, because in addition to the size of the generator and what happens if it goes down, ask Texas about the grid.
So is there in Ireland anybody who can say, okay, guys, here's our situation, and if we suddenly lose oil or gas, or we're still both, what are we going to do? I suggest a small nuclear reactor. Is there a person who can do that in the government, or is there anybody who's going to listen to it?
It's effectively our grid, isn't it? It's our grid that's responsible for that.
Okay, so our grid says, look, guys, this is the way it is. We got to have some small nuclear reactors. Let's have a national decision about this. And are we going to go nuclear or not?
Well, a couple of years ago, Engineers Ireland tried to have a national debate around the area of nuclear.
Yeah.
You know, 30, 40 years ago since the original one fell down. Why not let's start, but it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
The word nuclear is a major problem. People won't go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, all they got to do is look across the ocean to France, and they've had nuclear for forever, and they've not had a single problem with it. They've done a masterful job with nuclear
I'm not
power.
Quite sure they don't have a problem. Last summer and summer before, they had to shut down some of the power stations on the Saône, on the Rhone, because there wasn't enough water. And this summer, I think the same. The water in the river was too hot to cool the power plant.
Well, I mean, that's a global warming kind of situation. But still, they've done a pretty good job with, keeping a reliable source of power that hasn't had any challenges like they've had in other places.
Yeah.
Their model was to build the same plant everywhere. In the United States, every nuclear plant is different, little different.
That's right. Yeah.
They standardized the plant. And
you're absolutely right, Jim.
Them.
What happened in the United States was the free enterprise system. They sent out a bid for 6 different people for a nuclear station, and they got 6 different answers, and they went probably with the cheapest one, and that's different from the guy who won the next bid, who's different from the third guy who had a different bid, and then you got 3 different things out there, and there's no match. You're right. Exactly what they did.
Yeah, and you know, look up the SMRs, the small modular reactor stuff. The new ones don't use water as the coolant.
Oh, they don't?
No. Liquid sodium, helium gas, molten salts. The technology is changing rapidly, guys. And the issue that Liam raised about the problem with the reactor in France, I would be very surprised if the French haven't figured out that they can't continue with water-cooled reactors forever. They're pretty good at that stuff. We may laugh at the French in some ways, but they've been doing nuclear for 64 years, and they're pretty good at that stuff.
But you got 2 needs.
Are pretty good.
You got 2 needs for the water. one is to cool the reactor, and then the other is to cool the turbine. So you have to have water at the end of the day to generate electricity, because that reactor is still driving a turbine, which still needs water to cool the steam to pump it back up to the reactor. So there is always demand for water.
Yeah, Jim, do you know what the relationship is between the coolant for the core versus the turbine?
No, I don't. It's really see if in some of the reactors, which are what we call not pressurized but double loop, you're cooling the steam in the heat exchanger, and that steam is going to a turbine, and then you're just recirculating that water. So you're not really ever putting water into the reactor per se.
So you're recirculating.
You're recirculating it, yeah.
Yeah, but aren't that's the pressurized water, the PWR, the pressurized water reactor, aren't those the ones that are most suspect in terms of, I won't call them accidents, but malfunctions?
Yes, TMI was a pressurized water reactor.
Right.
And they had a problem, but
and Chernobyl was an even worse version of that.
Well, yeah, I from what I read of Chernobyl, there were a lot of other issues. They were trying to do some performance test.
Right.
Outside the limits.
And they had a kind of a Bord Planala problem.
Bord Planala. That's a new one.
I mean, they had. I mean, basically the reactor accident in Chernobyl perhaps could not have been prevented given the testing they were doing, but their reaction to it, or lack of reaction to it, was essentially a Bord Planala problem. A bunch of fucking bureaucrats couldn't get their heads together on what to actually do. The engineers on site knew what they had to do. Moscow wouldn't approve.
Well, the same thing happened at Fukushima.
Absolutely.
The site told them that they're going to blow the top off the reactor building.
Am I still here? Are we all still here?
And
yeah,
and
hey guys,
they said no.
We all still here?
Yes.
Yeah, but also
have I lost the connection?
Jim,
no, we can hear you.
We can see you.
Okay,
Jim.
I'm back. I guess I faded there for a little bit.
Well, anyway.
There must be something wrong with your electricity supply, maybe.
There you go.
Jim,
no, I think it might be a bandwidth issue more than electricity. Yeah.
You need a nuclear reactor around the corner from you.
There you go. Yeah.
Can I thank Barry for mentioning the 66 years of French nuclear, because I visited Saclay, one of their experimental plants, in 1966 when I was in UCD.
Well, we all went to Wilva in '68, Liam, on our final year trip. And I will vividly remember the sarcastic English engineer laughing at the idea that France would be 80% nuclear by the late 1990s. And he just thought that was the absolute most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. They did it in the 80s.
Like he said they were going to win the World Cup.
Well, Wilva was my first job. So I went there in '69 and was there for about a year. And it was a joke even then. So, and it never performed at anything close to its rated capacity.
Now, Wilfa was a nuclear station?
Yeah. In near Holyhead.
Yeah, I missed that trip. I wasn't on the boat, so I probably
you missed a good one.
Interesting.
I think there was a local guard that found himself in the water, didn't he? A local constable found himself in the water.
Don't you?
If that happened, I think we all deliberately misremember or disremember.
Yes. We were lucky to get out of Holyhead alive.
So guys, anyway, my whole thought process there So I was in error about Turlock Hill as a possible, solution. But at least the whole idea is valid that if you've got that amount of power and you've got a number of generating stations, then that's a possible solution if the oil and the gas went away.
Okay,
So,
can I ask a question? Was a second pump storage unit ever built in Ireland?
No.
not that I'm aware of.
It's not feasible. I mean, you won't find 80 sites.
Yeah.
It has to have very special geology and all the rest of it. So it's not a solution for anything.
Yeah,
No, but I
plus
think when it was built originally, 68, 69, whatever, the
Right.
plan was to do more, but they never did anymore. So there must have been a reason for not doing it.
But the
I think,
primary,
John,
Nice is one particular
I
issue.
think you're right, because I think I remember I did a tour of Turlock Hill a few years ago, and I think that question came up as part of the tour. And I think the fact was that two things: one, they couldn't find an appropriate site, and two, the economics didn't stack up.
but the
Okay.
primary purpose of the pump storage is to take care of the peak
Yeah,
in a
exactly.
big hurry. In a big
Correct.
hurry. In other words,
Yeah.
It's not contributing incremental capacity. It's
No.
just evening out capacity.
correct.
So guys,
And in fact, you might say, Peter, it's the difference between night and day.
Well done, Barry.
yeah. So then the solution is a bunch of SMRs instead of Turlock Hills. And so if you had a bunch of those, then at least you're going to soften the blow. May not be able to
I'm not
completely
too sure
replace.
blow is the right. I'm not too sure the blow is the right word. That's it.
So, but they gotta, if they're looking forward and there's another international incident where the pipeline is blown up or something goes wrong and suddenly there's a step function change in delivery, everybody's going to be back to the turf age.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
One of the problems is the fact that some people are saying, look, our future is in wind, and probably wind is the main one. So let's do that. Let's forget about everything else. But as Raymond says, how long will it take you to put in the wind farms? 8, 9 years, and that's the problem. So you have this theoretical view. Let's forget about all the kind of the fuels. Let's just go for wind. It'll solve with loads of wind. But how do you harness it? And nobody's addressing that particular question.
Well, there are all these manufacturers now with wind turbines of all different kinds, and you see them around California here in various places. But I mean, you've got all kinds of contractors that are willing to build the turbine, the whole generation system for you. So is it more of a planning thing where they won't allow you to, find a location in Ireland and put up your wind generator and go from there? Or is it that people are just scared of too many of these in the country, and I just printed a map of the existing locations, and they're fairly spread apart. So it's not, at least now, that they're overpopulated with wind farms. That might happen in the future, but if it's wind farms or no power, that's the way to go.
Yeah, but the point is, if you look at Spain or the Canary Islands, there's loads of wind farms on land. They're there, the
Yes.
turbines are everywhere. There's
Yes,
not that
they
many
are.
here. And
Yeah.
we get into the planning for people to say that they don't want it near them because of the noise and all of those items. So the
Sure.
fact that it's easier to put them on land, it's more difficult to put them at sea. But then you've got the other problems, it's maybe 8, 10 years before you can get them installed. And the West Coast is great, but it's very, very deep. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of issues like that which are not being addressed. I mean, most of our planning is on a 5 to 8 year basis, but they don't think maybe 20 years ahead.
Yeah. So Joe Farmer in Roscommon doesn't want you coming along and building a wind farm next door to his cattle.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So, I mean, if it comes down to a yes or no, do we get power or do we have wind farms? I mean, that's a pretty simple decision, and everybody's going to have to own up to it sooner or later.
But as the old question that was asked many years ago goes, do you walk to work or take your lunch?
Oh God.
We should just get the same lads who built the bicycle shed in Leinster House to do this.
I don't
So-
know. I mean,
I've got to go, gentlemen. But on that note, Barry, I think we should task those people with building SM small nuclear reactors.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like
I just circulated 2 items. One is a policy paper on data centers in Ireland, and the other is an extract from the Irish Times today about those entitled "Will Nuclear Really Power the AI Boom?"
Thanks, Ray.
It's on the
Okay.
on your engineering WhatsApp.
I'll
Excellent.
follow up with another PDF on nuclear.
Great.
And
Okay, guys.
I would comment, Ray, you raised this earlier. One last comment I would make is a lot of the prosperity for our young people in Ireland is the availability of work in the major population center called Dublin, in large measure created by these companies. And we should not we shouldn't ignore that too much. It's creating a huge amount of very, very high paid jobs for young graduates in Ireland.
Yeah.
No question.
don't kill the goose that lays the golden egg.
Indeed.
Eamon, great presentation. Thanks very much.
Hey, well done, Eamon.
Good.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
And,
you,
and
I'm going to stop.